Earl Grey, hot.
Well, welcome to the Picard Maneuver. I'm Tim.
I'm Joel.
And we just finished watching episode 5 of Star Trek Picard, Stardust City Rag.
Stardust City Rag. So, just a quick message to those that are watching. We want to let you know that there are going to be spoilers. We're going to talk about stuff that happens in the episode. So if you have not seen the episode, stop watching now. I know it's live, so if you tune in a few minutes later, you're obviously not going to hear me saying that. But if you are watching or you're watching this pre-recorded, this is going to have spoilers. So what did you think, Tim? What did you think?
Well, so this is an episode we've been moving towards for the last couple episodes. We knew we were finally going to get to Free Cloud. Likely finally going to see Maddox and have some sort of, we saw in the preview, some sort of heist mission of going undercover as these swank characters. So I had some high hopes for the episode as far as getting somewhere, doing something, meeting Maddox. But unfortunately, the episode was very problematic in its pacing, tone, and what it actually dealt with. And I feel like it hurt a few characters. In several ways. I guess the good part of the episode, I think, is Elnor. Elnor had a very small part, and it was kind of disappointing in that he didn't do more, but Elnor has a few cool lines. Part of the dynamic is they were sort of going undercover, pretending to be these sort of like suave, they would call them facers. That wasn't clear what that meant, but either way, they were going undercover as like people going to like this Vegas wheeling and dealing setup, and of Elnor, of course, is super naive. He was been raised by the complete candor people, so he doesn't even like understand lying or anything. So he's just like, "What are we? I don't understand. Like, are we telling a lie?" And
right. So where were we? Is this who we really are? Is this? There's a moment where they say Rios is going to do this, and he's like, "But are you really that?" Like you can tell he's naive to the whole.
And that was kind of the best part of the episode.
Yeah.
And I wish they could have done more with it. Actually, I think. It actually would have made the episode work better.
So let me get this straight. Are you saying that basically out of that whole episode, the one thing that you liked was his character and how they played that? Or are there other
Elnor?
things? Yeah.
Well, there's a lot to talk about. And I think we'll talk about that now.
Let's get into it.
Let's get right into it then. Was there anything else what did you think in general, though, before we get right into it?
Yeah, so we've watched it a couple times now. So far, I'm feeling like, honestly, it's probably my least favorite episode. I'm really sad to say that because, like Tim, I had high hopes for this. The last episode I really liked, and I felt like we were finally moving a little more forward with exposition in a way where we were seeing them do things. We were seeing characters a little more developed. We were introducing new characters. And overall, I didn't really like it that much. I would agree. I also liked Elnor. There was a few things also that I liked, but probably the weakest one in my opinion so far. So I think, we should get into maybe some of the details.
So this episode started like the last, every episode except the first episode, with a flashback. 13 years ago. This episode did not do any cuts to the Borg cube.
Yes, we
to
see
the artifact.
The artifact.
So we didn't get that scene at the end again with Narek and Narek and his, I was thinking Narek and his sister, where it was basically the same scene and got more and more extreme every time. And because they'd have to go super extreme this time. But anyway, so the flashback was 13 years ago, so 1 year after the attack on Mars, and it was a pretty huge event, sort of in the life of Seven.
Yes,
and Icheb. So when I was watching, it starts out basically with a guy on a dark sort of medical bed, and there's a doctor who's covered in like whose face is sort of covered by
surgical mask.
Surgical mask. That's the word I was looking for. And she's basically violently like taking. You can see he's been parts of his body have been cut into, and she's taking something out of his eye. I don't remember if they said optical node or cortical node.
I think it's cortical. I wrote it down.
And that's cortical node's been a significant. On the Voyager show, they reference the cortical node as sort of a really important part of a Borg drone. And I think it implies that I don't think we've talked about it before, but every Borg drone seems to have a sensory attachment to one of their eyes, then like a tool attachment to their arm. And the sensory attachment has something to do with the cortical node, and the cortical node is really important. And that makes sense. If you have a bunch of drones, you want a sensory thing, and they want it to be connected to the brain, because the brain's the part that's somehow connected to the entire Borg collective. And having your cortical node damaged or removed is a really traumatic thing.
Mm-hmm.
So this is happening to this guy on the bench. I remember when I first saw the episode, I noticed the makeup of the guy, and I was like, hey, that's the same species that Icheb is. That guy must be from the Delta Quadrant too. And then very quickly you realize, oh, that actually is supposed to be Icheb. The guy, the doctor is trying to like find the cortical node, and then Seven comes in to save him.
Right.
But he's already sort of his eyes and part of the cortical node.
It was pretty graphic.
Removed. Yeah, had been removed, and then he's just like, I don't remember the exact words. We just basically like, just end it, kill me.
Right. I mean, he's just he's beyond.
She just does it.
Reproach.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know.
Beyond repair.
I don't know if we want to analyze that part too much, because we've definitely seen on Voyager the Doctor has gotten people back from way further sort of forward
I think
simulations
overall,
like that. But my instinct is that Seven should have been like, we'll get the Doctor, he can save you. But clearly that's a darker situation, and she realized that he was too far gone. And I'm accepted to that. Once you've damaged the cortical node, maybe there's no coming back.
She has an Old Yeller moment where she has to put him out to pasture. Yeah, so I felt like the graphicness of that was over the top in a kind of unnecessary way. Star Trek TNG, for example, there were lots of things that were happening, people getting experimented on, but they never showed this much graphic images, and I don't think it's necessary. We know what's going on. We don't have to like see it. I'm not going to even describe it because I think even that's too graphic.
But this, it was
they got the point
across.
But yeah, do you have a still?
Yeah, so I want to talk about... So first of all, the reason I originally assumed that it wasn't Icheb is because I had seen the actor who played Icheb.
Hi, Icheb. There he is. What's his name? Do we know? Let's not sidetrack on that if we don't know. But
I do know it, but
Shout out to him. Shout out to him.
It's difficult to say.
Okay, there's a good excuse.
It's like an Incan Hawaiian name.
Seems like a really nice guy, though. Like, look at this photo. I want to hang out with this guy.
Anyway, I saw him very recently on, there's this YouTube show, GameSack, that's super awesome if you like old games, retro gaming and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And he was on an episode, and he did a really cool cameo, and I think he's still in the Southern California area. So in my head, I just always assumed if we saw Icheb, that'd be awesome, and they would be the Icheb actor.
But alas...
But alas, it wasn't Icheb, and it wasn't someone to me who looked anything like Icheb. But I remember, I haven't included the shot of actual Icheb from Voyager.
That's okay.
But either way,
point stands.
That's that guy, but younger.
He played him, yeah.
But there was an episode of Voyager in the 7th season where they're jumping through time, and you see an older Icheb. And I noticed that the older Icheb, although it looked nothing like actual Icheb, actually kind of looked quite a bit like the Icheb from this flashback scene of Picard. I don't know what that means. That future version of Icheb was only in it for like a few seconds. It was sort of like, hey, we're the old people, or this is what Icheb looks like growing up, but it wasn't he wasn't a very large character at all.
There you go.
But there you go. That's
the opening. So that's a
Icheb.
character. That's a throwback to Voyager. We have a couple other in this episode in particular.
I do want to talk a little bit more about Icheb.
Well, let's not get too caught up on Icheb because we got a lot to talk about. But
no, I think we should, because Icheb actually was a really big character in Voyager, and a pretty significant character for Seven. So the line later in the episode where she says that basically he was the closest thing I have to family, and she was very much a mother figure for him. And he was kind of like a Wesley character, a little bit of an Alexander Rozhenko character on Voyager. I mean, I don't have to go too back, but he has sort of an interesting backstory where his family basically he came from a planet that was on the edge of Borg space. And they were been terrorized by Borg space continuously. And anyway, his family programmed him with a virus, like they were thinking of doing with Hugh, and let him be assimilated by the Borg in an attempt to attack the Borg. He was a weapon that they used against the Borg. And they sort of dealt with that in an episode. And that was his strongest episode, probably. But anyway, the fact that Seven having to kill Icheb would be a huge. That's like Worf having to kill Alexander. Like an episode. If we saw in an episode of Picard where there was a flashback where Worf had to kill Alexander Rozhenko. Like that's essentially what happened. So it was a pretty traumatic.
Yeah. So she didn't want to kill Icheb, and she had to, which made her ticked off, and especially at this one particular character who was the one harvesting these Borg parts to sell on the black market. Who is, I kept calling her Bejewel, but it's not Bejewel, it's Bajazel.
So right, the next scene is a two weeks ago flashback where we finally meet Maddox, and Maddox is coming to.
He's not played by the same actor. This was another thing I was just going to bring up, that Icheb was not played by the same actor, and they also chose to find a new actor for Maddox as well.
Yeah, which also surprised me because I know I was under the impression that both of those actors would have been available.
We were hoping, I think.
Yeah, I mean, neither of the characters ended up being in for very long, so I don't think it really matters.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Well, this guy did an okay job, and I think the guy that played...
and I'm not 100% against recasting.
No, sure.
What's convenient at the moment.
Right.
If it works.
So there's that.
So I don't know if we want to talk too much about this scene, but basically, Maddox had owed money to Bajazel.
She funded, I think, helped fund some of his research and things. So he owed money.
That's very likely. Maybe his research could have somehow even helped some of her cybernetic ambitions.
They were in cahoots in some way, maybe.
And particularly since he was on the run and hiding.
But now that his lab is destroyed, he can't repay her.
Okay, I guess there was a couple of those sort of what you call it.
There we are.
A couple of those sort of like Easter eggs where they refer to Tranya in that scene.
Yeah. There's a few throwbacks in this episode.
He refers to a solvent that
wipes away the molecular,
just like Fajo did with Data's clothes in that the Most Toys episode.
Right.
And anyway, so she just basically drugs him and he knocks out. And just before he drugs, he frankly says, "I think the Tal Shiar are after me." And then she's like,
Ooh, before she drugs him. Yeah, because she was just going to kill him. She says to her henchman, who is this giant alien guy. I forget what kind of alien he is. I have it written down.
It was Beta something.
Onari. And he can smell lies. He's kind of like a Bajoran, but not, because he can smell it instead of sensing it. But anyway, so she says kill him, but then she changes her mind because she finds out that he is being chased by the Tal Shiar, which makes her realize maybe I can get more money from them. So she captures him. And I guess tortures him, because when they find him, he's like all hurt. I don't know why she couldn't have just captured him and why she had to torture him, but...
We don't even see that. It's just sort of
you can't just capture someone without torturing them. Like, everyone knows that.
If you're a thug and you capture someone, you knock them around a little bit.
You gotta knock them around a little bit. So there's that. So that's kind of what's happening there.
But of course, if you're going to make a secret deal with the Tal Shiar, you let the local sort of like Craigslist of nefarious Craigslist let know so that Rafi can hack into it later.
Yeah, which becomes a pretty easy thing to do. Them finding how to get Maddox from this really, I don't know, they have control, they have power, they're like this underground black market. But she has maybe like one main security guard and then two more. I feel like she would have had a lot more security and a lot more defense. But anyway, that's later in the episode where they actually come to get Maddox. So
I think that's basically the next scene in the episode.
Is it?
Yeah, it introduces them coming right to
sure. But before that, we have some fun stuff where they get to put on some interesting costumes and act like characters, facers that are going to go, because this is their idea. Well, this is how we'll get Maddox. We'll show that we have something of more value that we can trade, which becomes 7 of 9.
Yep.
But then they say, well, if we're going to go to this Vegas-like planet, which kind of reminds me a little bit of stuff from like Blade Runner, you have these like giant dancing women, and you have all these interesting... there we go. So a couple things here, too, to take notice of. Mott's Hair Emporium and Quark Bar. I'm surprised it doesn't say Quark's Bar.
Quark's Bar and Grill from Deep Space Nine. Yeah.
So whether these were just throw-in things that somebody was like, let's do it because we've got some cool Vegas-like lights. But anyway, it reminded me a lot of Blade Runner. But this is the planet. It's like a Las Vegas planet. Or sorry, it's like a Las Vegas city on the planet Freecloud. This was something we kind of got confused about because it was like they didn't really explain what Freecloud... I think Freecloud is the planet and then Stardust is the city.
Yeah, whereas earlier in the last few episodes, maybe this is just something I assumed, but Freecloud to me sounded more like a large station than a planet.
Right. But it turns out, looks like
why would you call a planet Freecloud? Freecloud sounds a little like I could be stationed on a planet, but anyway, they're at Stardust City, which is Freecloud, which is related.
So they go to this Las Vegas of space, and in order to be believable to this alien that can smell lies, and also this woman who's got Maddox captured, they have to look like these facers, which I guess are really colorful characters that are very confident. They wear feathers in their hats. They have pizzazz. Picard ends up being. We talked about this a little bit last episode, and we looked at like the preview for this week. He has an eye patch, like leather gloves with like a pinky ring on one of his gloves. It's pretty interesting.
And then more significantly, a French accent.
And a French accent. So like when he's kind of developing the character, before they beam down, he's kind of like, I forget the line he says, but he's like, this will be a great thing. And anyway,
no, he speaks in French.
French accent. Anyway, it's quite campy and kind of silly, but at first I was like, well, that's okay. They can be silly in this moment. They're getting ready to beam down. They go to the planet. The silliness kind of continues. Patrick Stewart continues to ham up this character and really play it very big and flamboyant, which I think makes sense, but at the same time, some of the way that they were playing these characters took away from a bit of the weight of this scene. It was supposed to be this kind of dramatic, they could die at any moment, and also he's making jokes about Seven. He's saying like, oh, the Borg, she had too much Borg in her and whatever, and it's almost like also, I know he's selling the character, but...
Yeah, it was pretty dark, the way he described her as a child.
Right, that's kind of what I was getting at.
And why that makes her a more valuable...
He really went there. But he did it in this weird, lighthearted way, like almost jokingly, so the tone felt a little weird. One comment I made is this is another episode that was directed by Jonathan Frakes. Jonathan Frakes is super good friends with Patrick Stewart. At the end of the day, these are people making these things. And there they are. Something kind of tells me that they were just like, maybe having a little too much fun with this, which is kind of cool for them, but you could just tell that maybe Stewart went to Frakes and said, wouldn't it be cool if I had an eye patch? And Frakes was like, I can't do a Frakes impression, but maybe like, oh, that'd be so funny, that'd be great. And they kind of played around with it, and you could kind of sense that in the scenes, and it just, I don't know, to me it was a little too
And
goofy.
This scene was set up throughout this. It was cut like the classic sort of a heist movie scene, where they are planning the heist and talking about what they're going to do, and it cuts between that and them actually starting the heist.
Mm-hmm.
So it plays it in like we're going to have that type of heist that's about to happen.
Right, they're building it up, and they're making it kind of seem like it's going to be this cool thing where they're like, you have to walk this way, and you radio so-and-so and tell them when this is happening. And yet, I don't really think it played out that way.
Oh, not at all. It was very confusing. It very immediately became a very personal discussion between Seven and Bejazzle, with a lot of backstory that was very quickly explained between them. A lot of exposition.
Mm-hmm.
There was a scene that really annoyed me where she quickly explains who Echeb was, so everyone knew who Echeb was, and the backstory between her. And that alone is kind of annoying, maybe necessary. It needed the viewers who might not have watched all the seasons of Voyager need to see it.
Yeah.
But then they were using cutting back to the flashback that we saw 20 minutes before,
and flashing back to 20 minutes ago.
That's always been a huge pet peeve and a really sign of really bad editing or really bad. Like we just saw that, we know we made the connection.
I think I remember you watching it. In that moment, you literally said, "I'm not stupid." In that moment, you were like, "I'm not stupid. Like I know what just happened." And that's the vibe you get. It's not their intent, but the vibe you get is kind of like, hey, remember? And like maybe if it was 4 episodes ago, it's 20 minutes ago. Like we just saw this happen. So, and also it's the flashback to this really graphic moment of someone's like cortical nerve or whatever it is being removed. So again, I kind of was like, I don't want to see this again. Like we get it. So anyway, so there was that.
Yeah, and in that scene, like the doctor lady says Bejazzle when Seven comes up. Like it's well connected.
We know what's going on.
We know what was going there.
Yeah.
Anyway, so their sort of relationship expands. It immediately cuts to like so the whole heist and trick thing, the ruse ends very fast.
Yeah, they don't really.
There's an interplay between Rios and the Beta Onari guy for a bit that's kind of useless.
Right. So there was some stuff there. I don't know if it's worth mentioning, but I'm just as far as writing. When he smells him and says, like, am I telling the truth? And he smells him and says, you are telling the truth. And you also had some kind of roast beef for lunch. And it's like, yes, we get it. He can smell stuff. Like, he didn't need to say that.
It was kind of like we were saying, it's kind of like a Betazoid meets a Nausicaan, but sort of poorly done. One thing he does is he does mention
that his hands weird too.
Rios knew Quark of Ferenginar. They worked on something with the Breen. So at this point, Quark has gone back to Ferenginar.
I guess.
So I don't know what that means for Rom.
But also runs a store on.
But also has a Quark's Bar. Maybe there's a Quark's Bar franchise. Maybe he's just a franchise Quark's Bar, and there's a bunch of Quark bars all across, and he's established it back in Feringa, and Feringa Renard's reverted back to its more its old ways. Versus what we saw in the last episode there of Deep Space Nine. I don't know, but it was more sort of throwaway lines.
Right.
I don't know. I like references and stuff.
As long as they feel rooted in like what's actually happening.
Yeah.
Or the reality of, because if it's kind of like a throwback to just be like, hey, we mentioned Quark, but it doesn't really tie into like what he would actually be doing, or
it sort of makes you challenge it. Like they obviously has mentioned Quark, but yeah, maybe. I don't know, but maybe there's something that makes sense that could go on there.
There's a few references in this episode to Voyager stuff and DS9 stuff, and I think that makes sense. There's a moment where Seven's doing something, and you hear just for a moment the Voyager music play. So that was kind of cool. Like I don't mind stuff like that because it makes you think of something without necessarily knowing you're thinking about it. So anyway, that's some of the plot, some of those things. But
yeah, we might as well wrap up what happened in the plot, and then talk about more what we think about it.
Well, yeah, I just wanted to briefly say basically that you also have this B story of Raffi going to try to find her son. She does find him. It's kind of weird. Like she says, "I'm clean now. Everything's cool. I want to be in your life again." He's like, "I don't like you because you made my life hard when you had these conspiracy theories about the Mars attack and the Tal Shiar."
I sort of read that as like, well, you know what it was like being raised by someone who couldn't stop saying exposition all the time?
Yeah. My family was just always exposition. I had to get away from you guys. That's kind of what happened.
It was sort of an awkward scene that was poorly done. And it was tonally didn't fit what was going on before and after. It was supposed to be this sort of really deep scene about how an estranged son and her trying to connect with an estranged son who's not ready to talk with them. But, I mean, ultimately, I don't think it paid off. It didn't work.
No, and I think they were trying to weave that B story in with another B story that was also confusing, which was Seven's kind of backstory or history with Bjayzl. And so the two, it almost would have been better to focus on one. It felt like they tried to do both, and I don't think
that it worked. I'm going to mention more. I'll talk more about that in the final scene. But to me, the episode really felt like they failed both the characters.
Yeah, it didn't do them justice, I don't think. So it's unfortunate. A few other little things, some funny things in the episode. When they were coming into Stardust City, they have these ads popping up. These like kind of pop-up ads, and in order to get rid of the ads, you have to like punch them and interact with them in weird ways. So that was
right. So it was a sort of play on pop-up.
That was interesting. I don't know if I'm saying interesting in good or bad way. I'm not really sure.
No, it was good at establishing what Free Cloud was. I remember in the scene just before that there was an ad for Free Cloud
right,
Stardust City, where they basically said like this is. They didn't say Vegas, but they said like your secrets are
safe with us.
Like it's safe on Vegas.
What happens on Free Cloud?
Yeah, they basically said that.
So there you go. Yeah, that's pretty much the plot. So they do make the deal to in this alien that smells things. They convince him it's cool, so they make the deal to take 7 of 9. But then, what's happening? 7 decides that she's going to. She had a different motivation the whole time, which she didn't let Picard know about or anyone else, and that was to just get revenge, basically, on Bjayzl. And so she takes her by the neck, and all of a sudden Picard's like, what's going on? Maybe the truth is finally. And then I think you do have a line from Elnor, which was kind of great because he was like, "Are we telling the truth now?"
Yeah, and then Elnor gets all the phasers.
Yeah,
and that sort of wraps it up. But then there's a point they basically decide, 7 can't kill Bjayzl now because it'll put a bounty on all their heads because they're with her at the moment. Which would not
be cool for her to do.
So they have to beam up,
right, to get away from getting the bounty.
And then basically she just at the end of the episode beams right back. Just beams right down super easily. Just beams down with 2 phaser rifles right to
there's no guards around.
Nothing stops her. So why didn't she do that 12 years ago? I don't know.
Or any time within that time period.
And then they just wrap it up. There's a bunch of sort of weird lines between the two, Bjayzl and 7.
Yeah, we were trying to figure out their relationship.
We're trying to figure out what was actually going on there. Yeah. And initially we were really confused about the backstory, because initially, what actually was happening? So this is 12 years ago. Is that 7? This is 13 years ago. after this is 13 years ago, before the destruction of the Romulus star,
Right.
before the supernova, but after the Federation, the attack on Mars, the
Abandons.
Federation abandons them. So there's
Yes.
a bunch of refugees moving in anticipation of the star exploding. She is working on Fenris. She goes to Fenris to sort of help people. There's a band of people helping people. Icheb is on R&R on he's Icheb who came back with Voyager from the Delta Quadrant, joined Starfleet. He's apparently was a lieutenant in the USS Coleman, but on leave from the USS Coleman, he had joined the people on Fenris. Presumably, I don't know if the language was a little different, so I don't know if they'd founded the Fenris Rangers yet. But anyway, they were the Fenris Rangers on Fenris, and Icheb was then sent on a mission to do reconnaissance, but it was a trap. They captured him. And that's the scene that we see where they're taking the board.
Right. So that's how he got captured. But
Yes.
then the weird thing we couldn't figure out was Seven's connection to Bjayzl and why they have this weird...
Yeah.
So what ended up happening was...
We watched it a second time to figure it out because there was so much like rapid exposition at this point. We say exposition a lot.
You would just...
Anyway, continue.
Yeah, so we find out that at some point Seven was connected to Bjayzl. Bjayzl pretended to be a member of this whole, like she wanted to be one of the people that's
The Fenris Rangers?
maybe one of the Fenris Rangers, or like at least
Or the
was a wanting to help them, and got Seven's trust. Had it so that Seven would trust her, and then use that to get the information on
where Icheb was,
and finding out things like that, which is how he got captured. So at some point, Seven trusted Bjayzl. Bjayzl betrayed the trust and had Icheb killed, and then at some point I think captured Seven as well, because there's reference to like, you wanted me, but I got away. I was the one that got away. I was the one that got away. So there's a few references that almost made it sound like they had almost like a more than just a friendship. Like maybe they had a relationship.
Bjayzl called Seven Annika, and that's not something that was normal on Voyager.
Right.
The only that was her name when she was a child, before she was assimilated, and she didn't really use that name. I mean, there's a question about maybe after she became more human, when she came back from Voyager, she might have started using that name.
Right.
I don't know, but I don't think so. I think, and the one time I remember Annika being used, there was sort of a weird romance that was played that they sort of touched on in season 7 between Chakotay and Seven that didn't really work out, and it was sort of abandoned very quickly.
Those things are always a little...
But I believe Chakotay used Annika in that context. So Annika is sort of a name that only would be used by someone who's very close to her. Maybe a romantic.
And it wasn't just that. There was like little lines here and there. I didn't write them down, but little lines from Bjayzl that would say to Seven, even before Seven kills Bjayzl, she says something. And anyway, there's a few moments where you're like, what really happened between these two? The thing is that we were saying, will we ever find out? Or is this going to be one of those things, because we still don't really know, is it going to be one of those things where we'll look back and be like, what actually was the deal there? And did it matter?
So the episode ends with Seven going down, actually just straight up killing Bjayzl, and then shooting her way out.
Which again didn't seem difficult at all.
But that was how we left. And there was sort of a moment where between her and Picard, just before she beamed down, where she said since after going to Gorge, did you get your humanity back? And he's like, yes, I did. And she said 100%. And he said, no, but we work on that every day. And she says, every damn day.
He says, but we work on it, don't we, or something? She says, every damn day.
And then she beams down. So there was that sort of moment. So I'm not 100% sure if we're supposed to see Seven again. As she left, she gave him like this weird calling card thing. So there's no reason that she'd do that unless she's.
I saw that as kind of like I was like, what is that? What did she just give Picard? I think it's like, because she says if you ever need I forget how she put it, but anyway, like someone to help you, and she gives him like a little maybe an e-business card. So I think maybe she'll be back.
Yeah, that's a weird thing to give in this. And in this show, a lot of stuff's pretty heavy-handed in the way that it always comes back. Everything we've seen like that has come back.
So to assume that it won't come back is...
And presumably we'll have more explanation between the Bjayzl relationship, because there was a lot of weird stuff. There were a lot of, but a lot of ambiguous, quickly Sid stuff there. That
I think they might have been closer than we were realizing, or that
So that's what's up with that.
That's what's up with that. I guess
we also have one more scene where, just maybe to wrap up the thing with Raffi, who's Raffaella, is her full name. We learned. she's back on the ship, but like is locked in her room and doesn't want to talk to anyone like a teenager. I do remember earlier when the first episode where we sort of introduce her, she says something along the lines of, "I lost my security clearance and I lost my ... in the explanation of why she's so angry about Picard.
Right.
Presumably, based on that language, she lost her son.
Yeah. So
she's blaming Picard for her son's estrangement. Obviously, I don't know why Picard did that. Again, Picard has this sort of fathership relationship with Elnor. Obviously, Seven is has a motherly relationship with Icheb.
Yeah, you've got a lot of like fathers with children or mothers with children. One thing I mentioned,
and obviously Maddox with the twins.
That's what I was going to bring up, Maddox with the twins. So let's get into maybe the Maddox stuff because we've talked about kind of the A story. One of the things that was going on behind the scenes was the Agnes Girardi character. She's on the ship. We've had some speculation about who is she really, who's she working for, is she a spy? In this episode, for the first time, we see that she had a relationship with Maddox. She was closer to him than we thought. They were actually kind of dating. There's a scene where she's watching a video of them cooking together, and he says, "I baked cookies." She's like, "Oh, this is when you burn them?" And he's like, "No, she clearly doesn't know what baking is." Anyway, he says he likes cookies made this way better than...
But they had a romantic relationship.
Yeah. Let's cut to the chase here. So we see that she knows he's coming back. She's kind of prepping to beam them back in. She's getting nervous about it. After watching it a second time, we thought maybe it wasn't so much that she was nervous about beaming them. She was nervous about what she might have to do to Maddox. He comes onto the ship. He's in kind of a bad place. He goes to the sick bay, and he's being treated. Picard comes and visits him and kind of says,
where do I need to go next episode?
Yeah, that's basically it. Where do I need to go? Because he talks about Daj. Oh, she's dead, isn't she? He mentions a mother AI program, and I kind of was like, really? It was called that? AI. It was called just like a mother AI. Anyway, there's a lot of... So we'll
want to
go back to this quickly. But what ends up happening is that Agnes says, you should leave. He's really tired. Picard leaves pretty much right after she kills him. But there's a lot there because she says, there's things I know that I wish I didn't know, and this is why I have to kill you. And
I wish they hadn't shown me.
He says that Soong and
myself
and you had a big part to play in the Soji and
Daj. And she says, that's another thing I have to atone for. So she's learned something about how terrible that is in some way. Enough that she's willing to actually kill.
Right. Does she believe in the destroyer myth now? Has she been brought into that understanding? And now she's saying, I feel bad. I have to atone for the fact that I had a part to play in bringing around the destroyer. And seems kind of like that.
So looking back on her character, in the first episode, she was very willing with Picard to talk about Maddox and the backstory and the twins, and had she seemed to have a very different memory of them. She didn't think the twins were possible, but she did seem to not have this view that she has now.
Then she did have a meeting.
But I don't remember, I think it was the second episode, there's a scene where Commodore O goes to see her with her sunglasses. And she's just like they were eating a sandwich in the sun, and then it cuts, and then the next scene she's like really gung ho about going on.
So something was mentioned there.
So
something happened.
Something clearly happened. From the way this character's development, whatever I wish they hadn't shown me that changes her mind here and gets her to do all this stuff. Must have happened then. I don't know why. The head of Starfleet security, who has ties to the Tal Shiar and Vaj would send Agnes Girardi as the secret agent to kill Maddox.
Yeah, it may be separate things happening here that are causing Agnes to do what she did here. It might not just be the meeting with Commodore O. She might be in cahoots also with the Jean Vache as well at the same time. Something's influenced her to do this, regardless.
Yeah, and Commodore is also in cahoots with the Vaj. And it just seems like her character was different in the first episode.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and we did have mention too that we know now for sure a few lines that Starfleet is also definitely involved in this in some way, in the attack on Mars, in the a lot of the synths.
The Conclave of 8.
That was a name drop.
That Raffi says that to her son.
Yeah.
Anyway,
or he says it to her, like, "Oh, you're going to say something to me about the conspiracy, the Conclave of 8?" And okay, that's
she was a horrible mother. Her job was to be an expert on security and the Romulans. Why is it a weird thing that she's... Anyway.
Yeah, so some of the motivation behind some of this stuff is is
unclear at this point.
Unclear.
So, but one really cool thing I want you notice this, and I'll bring it up, and stealing your thunder. But
I don't know what it is, so you better.
While Picard is talking to Maddox before she kills Maddox, we see these sort of odd scenes of Agnes in like the foreground and them talking in the background, and she's reacting to what they say, and she very clearly is reacting to when Maddox says that Soji is on the Borg cube, the artifact.
Yeah, you have a moment where
it's pretty clear that that's what she wanted to hear.
Now I can kill you. Yeah, she kind of she's in the foreground. She's listening to them talk, and he's like, "Yeah, she's on the artifact," and Agnes is kind of like, "That's the information I wanted." And then they cut back to her again at another moment that seemed really like purposeful. That's the thing about the show. We've talked about this in other videos, and we have a video coming out soon where we kind of talk about how some of it feels like there's almost too much exposition. There's never just a line that's just someone saying
exposition.
Something.
I think you might be onto something.
Have we said that already? Anyways, one thing I wanted to mention, I think we're pretty much through the episode. That's basically what happened. I wasn't a huge fan. One of the other things that doesn't make sense to me, which we were hoping, this is another reason why I'm disappointed, because I'm like, they're going to meet Maddox. We're finally going to find out a little more about Daj and Soji. We're going to find out why. We're going to find out why one is on a Borg cube, why one was going to the Daystrom Institute. What was this all about?
Maddox must be some sort of taskmaster that's controlling what's going on here. We don't know if he's a villain or a friend or something ambiguous in between, but he's something.
Yeah, and he knows. He knows something that we don't know. Turns out he didn't really know anything. His motivation for sending them was that he didn't know anything, and he's like, there were some things going on, and I sent them to figure it out. So
to find the truth. When you need to find the truth, you send your super valuable children, but don't tell them what their mission is.
Yeah, like this to me, I was like, as a parent, if I'm not a parent, but like if I was, and someone, for instance, was like, there's something really sketchy going on down the street.
At the Borg cube.
At the Borg cube down the street. The first thing that comes to mind for me isn't going to be like, send the twins.
Send the twins.
We got to send my
their memory so they don't know why they're there.
Yeah, send the kids. Don't tell them why we're sending them.
In case she meets with like a super secret, sketchy Romulan guy.
Right. It's like because he has this moment where he says they were perfect, perfectly imperfect. And he kind of has tears in his eyes. He clearly loved them.
Which I actually liked, because that was sort of the imperfection is sort of the humanity step that Data couldn't take, right?
Right, and we did talk about that before.
And how these characters are like the next step, the children of Data, where they're taking the step of imperfection towards humanity.
They're so darn valuable that when there's something sneaky and weird going on, you send them out into the abyss and hope they return. So, yeah, that moment I kind of didn't understand.
But you give them embedded mom AIs that will activate them.
Yeah, and that was...
And the timeline still doesn't really make sense, because he did this all 3 years ago?
I don't know.
That's what we're led to believe at the moment.
Right, yeah, that's when they were created. So
some characters have said these characters have existed for 3 years.
Right.
And didn't have backgrounds before that.
Yeah, so there you go. Like that was one of the big disappointment moments for me, because I thought, really, that's all Maddox knew, and also the fact that he's already gone. We had him in the episode for such a short time. He didn't really do anything. He was basically a plot device.
Yeah,
and that's certainly not what I was hoping for this character. It's similar to be honest, a little bit with 7 of 9. She was also kind of a plot device in this episode, and now here we are. We haven't really learned anything new. Like a few things here and there, but now we're back on track, I guess, to be like, we know where Soji is, so Maddox can die now. And I can see how maybe on paper, when the writers were in a writer's room, they were like, this is all really great stuff. This is going to be so cool. But I don't know, it just isn't.
Even with 7, there's sort of like the moment where, like, does she take revenge? Like, Icheb tragically dies in her arms, and she has to kill him because of this character who she trusted, and she didn't really... Maybe, I think the implication is, I think I'm maybe reading a little bit out to it, but she has some sort of relationship where she puts too much trust in Bjayzl because she wasn't familiar. I remember the way the characters was sexualized on Voyager. She didn't really know her own sexuality and wasn't really capable of having relationships with people without them being kind of weirdish. Mm. And that sort of naivety maybe is why her trying to find her humanity, she trusts Bjayzl, and then obviously Bjayzl betrays her and gets Icheb killed, and that would be a really dark situation for her. And then she's got to sort of deal with that and then decide, am I going to actually she's going to take revenge 13 years later on this character and kill her in cold blood and Picard's like,
which Picard isn't down with because he's like, murder is never the solution.
But it's fine.
Of course. But that's the funny thing too. Yeah, that's the funny thing too. Picard, I feel like old Picard would never have been like, oh, you're going to murder someone? Okay, well, every day we're searching for humanity, right? See you later. And then she just goes. And I mean, I get that he doesn't really, it's not like she's his crew member and he can say, I'm not allowing you to do this. But it just seemed like he was a little complacent in that situation where he maybe would have given one of his speeches to say, it will never make you feel blah, blah, blah. But anyway.
Yeah, that would have been a cool sort of dynamic between the two, is if Picard somehow was able to use his wisdom and their sort of connection of having Borg background to actually help her and help her overcome that sort of the problem she was having with dealing with humanity and trust issues and the guilt and stuff over
and without getting too much into this, because maybe we'll make another video on it, but we also had some ideas for how this episode could have gone, and maybe we'll do that eventually. But one of them was that if instead of being this, and what was the alien's name again?
You always remember something.
You remember the first part, and I always remember the second. Beta Onari.
There you go.
Right? He's basically a Betazoid and kind of a Nausicaan all in one. Why couldn't they have just had like this cool Betazoid on their side, and the Betazoid's just like sitting in the background, like picking up on what's going on, and then you could have brought in Picard's experience with Betazoids. And then even Nausicaans being like the muscle in the background, and
Picard's experience with Nausicaans.
Like you could have done something really cool, but instead they created this new alien that is kind of laughable. He's got a really deep voice. He has a superpower
to smell the truth, but it's fine. You just got to take some beta blockers and he get by it.
Benzos, like he literally took anti-anxiety meds, and then when they kicked in, he was like, "Oh yeah, man, like yeah." And then he's like, "I only smell no anxiety, right?" So you're clearly not lying. So clearly, what he smells. Okay. Maybe it'll make sense,
getting the Picard character to overcome because of his backstory with Betazoids would actually be a more interesting way to overcome that.
They could have done something maybe a little more interesting.
You're right there.
Hey. So we're now at about 40 minutes. I think we keep wanting to do these shorter, but obviously there's a lot to talk about. And, there's a lot to go through. But that's the episode in a nutshell. Picard with an eye patch.
Yeah, Picard had an eye patch.
Beta Onari with a smelling power.
Oh, was there the images?
Feather in the cap.
Oh, there's 7.
There's the eye patch.
And there's 7 at the
There's the guns ablazing.
Rifles. And that's it.
There you go. So we've talked about it. We've thought about it. We've shared it with you. What do you think? Let us know if you want to leave a comment.
I'm really, really interested in what other people thought of this episode because
we were reading just quickly some reviews, and some people were like, "This is the greatest thing ever." So,
those were just random posts.
They don't count.
Well, no. Well, they weren't reviews. They were just we just saw we were looking up an image, and we did just some random posts that people had done. It was like Reddit or some message board or something.
But we do want to know what people think.
Yeah, I'm interested in what people think, and because at least those people thought it was a good episode. What was good about it? Because
Elnor?
I'm not a Picard hater. A lot of the stuff criticism I'm hearing about Picard,
I really want to like the show,
about not being real Star Trek or not feeling like real Star Trek or being too political. It's not being political at all.
I'm not worried about those.
Where's the political stuff? Anyway, but I keep sort of coming back to just really simple. Awkward plotting, awkward dialogue, and
heavy-handed, lots of exposition.
Yeah, ever-handed.
Should we say exposition?
And so far,
tonally, it feels a little confused sometimes.
The overarching story is so far not been able to deliver anything.
Well, I just feel like they're only scratching the very surface of it, and it's kind of like I understand a slow burn. I love things that are a slow burn. I love stories that unfold slowly. This isn't really that. This is more like we're not sure how to give you information without we know we still have episodes left. So that's why I feel like they didn't even go to the Borg cube with Soji and Narek this time, because it was almost like, well, if we go there, what else are we going to say? We can't say anything more until Picard gets there, because
she's just going to look up the mythologist lady again and then go sliding with Narek again.
Sliding on your sock feet on the hallway.
And then Lieutenant Rizzo can show up again and
choke someone. So there you go. I don't know. Again, please let us know what you think. Like, comment, draw a picture. Whatever you want to do. You're the one that can do it. Don't shake your head at me. So there you go. That's episode 5. That's our review. We'll probably be putting up maybe some other content here this week. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Oh, let's cheers. And as always, I haven't said this for a while. I think I keep forgetting. As always, I hope we kept you engaged.
Make it so.
I try to say it like Picard too.
this how we ended?
Thanks for watching.